Hi, I'm Josh Love from the Billericay School, and this is my A2 Media coursework evaluation. I created this blog as part of the A2 Media coursework where I could document all my progress, research and planning in order to keep it nice and organised, make sure that everything was up to date and up to scratch. I started in September 2017 and I worked my way all the way through to now May 2018. This is all the documented progress I've made, from casting decisions, creating an animatic, focus group feedback, and even some of the construction phases that I'd filmed and put on my blog. Before filming, I had to make sure my camera was correctly optimised for production. I used the Canon 600D. This is a DSLR camera that is capable of filming good footage. I had to make sure things such as the aperture, the resolution and the shutter speed were all correct before filming, as this would affect the outcome of the actual product. I made sure that my camera was in a 1920 to 1080 resolution and it was at 25 frames per second consistently throughout the project. Otherwise, the inconsistencies would make the film look weird and would cause a negative effect on the viewers. I also had to make sure that the external microphone was attached correctly, and so the audio was picked up, and the internal microphone on the camera was good, but the external microphone made a big difference in what was recorded compared to the internal microphone, and I did conduct tests. I also made sure that the resolution did come out right and that I could render the footage correctly without having to worry about it and changing it and refilming. The shutter speed and ISO is how much light is allowed into the picture and frame, and this had to be consistently changed throughout the project as some areas were darker than others, footage didn't come out correctly, and in post-production I also had to change this with manual colour correction to make sure all the footage came out in an even tone and that everything was okay. For my research and planning stages, I had to look at a variety of different short films to make sure that I knew the conventions and identified all the content that came through first, and therefore I could apply them to my own work. I looked at a variety of different films, some that were related to my product and some were that varied in different genre, and so I could identify the conventions I did and didn't want. I looked at a short film called Proximity, which was actually quite useful as I wanted to look at the colour correction and the tones that used in the actual development of the film itself, that I could apply them to my own film. And the colour correction actually makes a big difference in what is filmed and how it's denotated by the audience. I also looked at a war-type film called Cardboard Warfare, which is another film that's a little bit different, but it was a World War II film based around the weapons and everything and all the artillery being made out of cardboard. It was a bit spoofy, but it still worked as a serious war film, and it came out well, and it gave me lots of ideas and how to create my own film and what I would do to follow the conventions. I chose to use Premiere Pro as my source of editing and compositing all the clips together for my film. I started by importing every single clip from which I had filmed, even the ones that I thought maybe may not be used, but actually came to be of use at some points. I had over 203 items, as you can see at the start. I had extra clips that I'd filmed as extra test footage. I had different sounds and productions that I had imported, and also had different After Effects that I had used. If you look closely, you can see all the composited projects, all the adjustment layers used for colour correction, all the sounds that I've also artificially increased and sounds that I have deleted, and you can also see the different effects that I've used as well. I chose to create special effects in my film that made the product more realistic and created a lot more verisimilitude. Unfortunately, these special effects had to be done digitally, and there was no practical way of doing this without having a high budget and skilled and professional trained people to do so. I used all the different elements of compositing and put my knowledge together I had previously from previous home projects, and it proved problematic at first. I found it very difficult to composite all the effects together, and I started using YouTube tutorials to do this. I had a look at the different YouTube tutorials and they proved okay, and they were useful in some way and some aspect, but they did make it quite hard to develop my own effects. I then stumbled across a website called Video Copilot that provided professional tutorials in a very simplistic manner, allowed me to develop all my skills in my own time, pause and make sure I could go through everything. I went through all the tutorials online. I found explosive training videos that allowed me to composite all my explosions, make my own explosions through my own effects I've downloaded, and composite explosions I could put into other effects later on. In the actual software itself, I ended up compositing my own explosion, taking about 3 hours to composite in general, but I was able to include this in footage and then render the footage and put it into my actual film using Premiere Pro. I used After Effects CC to do this, and it proved very well that it worked with Premiere Pro in a way that it was able to translate well without having too much worry of rendering and sorts.